G'day guys, Fight View 360 fans, it's your old mate Big J, Jason Fletcher here today. And again today we've got the pleasure and privilege of talking to the voice of Australian boxing, Foxtel's main event commentator Ben Damon. Ben, welcome back to the channel, mate. Always a pleasure.
Yeah, g'day Jason, good to talk to you, mate. Big week coming up and crazy week we've just had as well.
Absolutely, mate. So, and the last couple of weeks of Australian boxing have been the craziest and I dare say probably most disappointing we've had in a very, very, very long time.
Yeah, there's been a couple of real blows. Most notably, of course, Justis Huni not going to the Olympics anymore. Well, at least that does appear to be the case. I still hold just a glimmer of hope that maybe something can be done and he does get over there, because I know there's still various hand specialists and doctors who are trying to come up with something that could get him over to the Olympic Games and fight for that medal that he's been chasing ever since he was 7 years of age. But as it stands right now, he's not headed to the Olympics, and that is a real disappointment, because we've seen how good he's been in his professional boxing career so far. He was seated third at the Olympic Games at super heavyweight, so was right in a shot of winning a medal, and it would have just been enormous for the trajectory of his professional career if he came back with a medal from the Olympics. And the other thing that's happened is Michael Zerafa has decided not to head to Newcastle and not to fight Tszyu at this point. So yeah, that was a really tricky week for everyone involved. Thankfully, Stevie Spark has stepped up and he is in Newcastle now. We've got a big fight this Wednesday night, so a bit of drama for Zerafa and his camp, and going forward they've got a lot of things that they're going to have to sort through and going to have to try and repair the damage done to his reputation. But at least we do have a fight this Wednesday night, and it's a very good one as well.
Absolutely, and full credit to Stevie Sparks for having the cojones get into the ring on such short notice, considering he's never fought at 154. I mean, typical Queensland attitude. He'll have a crack. He's a Toowoomba boy. Those fellas from Toowoomba don't muck around, so yeah, good on him.
No, he's a tough guy, Stevie Spark, that's for sure. He didn't have to be asked twice, so the call came through to him while he was pulling beers, actually, in one of his part-time jobs that he does around his boxing, and he headed over to the gym to have a chat with Brendan Smith, his trainer, of course best known for his association with Michael Katsidis, and they had a quick conversation, and soon enough they came back and said, yep, we will do it if Michael Zerafa does pull out. And then a couple of hours later we got confirmation that was what was happening, so the call went back to Stevie Spark and he got on a plane the next day and headed straight to Newcastle, so credit to him for stepping up. He put on an outstanding performance against Jack Brubaker when he really jumped out of the pack and established himself in Australian boxing the first time on the big stage on the undercard of the Paul Gallen-Lucas Brown event, and looked really good there, won over a lot of fans, and people wanted to see more of him. He said that night to himself, I wouldn't mind fighting Tszyu at some point after they bumped into each other after the fight, but he didn't expect it to be this quick. You're right, he is jumping up in weight. He heads up from welterweight in his last fight to super welterweight now, so size will be a problem for him, you would think, but he's going to have the tenacity and the hand speed as well to give Tszyu some problems early on in this fight. So it's going to be fascinating to see what he does, because as he has said, it's a Rocky story, a Cinderella Man story. It's his golden ticket as well. So if he were to pull off what would be an incredible upset in Australian boxing, then he sets himself up for life and establishes himself as a name that everyone in Australia will remember for a long time.
Absolutely, absolutely. I just want to go quickly touch on Justis. Do you think that what he did was far too risky? Do you think that maybe he went one fight too many in regards to build up to the Olympics?
Yeah, well, it's hard to say. I guess in hindsight, certainly they've done the wrong thing. You can't argue with that, because it's turned out the way it has. But if he got through and it was the right preparation for him and he wasn't injured and he headed to the Olympics and he won a gold medal, you'd be saying that they were geniuses, wouldn't you, for the preparation that they put him through. But the situation is that he damaged his hand, the significant damage that's happened to the right hand, to the knuckle. It's a boxer's knuckle injury. The left hand is a thumb injury. It's not as significant, but the right hand's the one that's causing the problems at the moment. And he did it in sparring. He hit an opponent's elbow in sparring before the Christian Tszyu fight, so a couple of weeks before that fight. Went into the Christian Tszyu fight, had no dramas with it, and they thought, oh, we'll be okay here, the hand's okay. But in the first round against Paul Gallen, he re-injured that same hand in the same position, and that's the injury that at the moment is keeping him out of the Olympic Games. So yeah, you can certainly say that they made a mistake in the preparation, but I don't know what you put it down to. They were desperate for fights, for minutes, and for rounds as well, and they wanted this sort of a preparation for him. I don't know what they were getting in terms of an Olympic preparation by fighting Paul Gallen, but definitely it set him up in terms of his profile. So there's a school of thought either way, but as I said earlier, I just hope that something can be sorted out and they can get him over there and fight at the Tokyo Olympic Games, because it's something that he's wanted for a long time, and it'd do massive things for his profile and for his future as an Australian heavyweight and a pay-per-view star.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Do you believe that the Gallen fight would have been there regardless? Because I believe it would have. If he come home with the gold, that Gallen fight would have been tenfold as huge. Even if he went to the Olympics, it wouldn't have mattered. Do you think they should have waited? Or, I mean, in hindsight, yes, they should have, but what were you thinking?
In hindsight, they should have. Well, I was like everyone. I was very surprised that they had this schedule in place heading to the Olympic Games, and like everyone, I questioned it. I asked them why they were fighting Christian Tszyu and why 3 weeks later they're going into a fight with Paul Gallen so close to departing for the Olympic Games. But they said that that's what they wanted to do. They had a good explanation in that he needed the minutes and he couldn't get any fights, so that he needed to have these rounds in order to put himself in good stead at the Olympic Games. But yeah, they've ended up with the cold hard facts being that they shouldn't have had these fights, but they were to know that his hand would be damaged and then damaged again. So it's a really tricky one. It's a shame that they embarked upon the path that they did now, looking back on it, but what's done is done.
Absolutely, and we wish Justis all the best, speedy recovery, all that, because, you know, as a fellow Queenslander, you've got to back your own brethren. But yeah, I was thinking, I was really concerned about him, and unfortunately, it's backfired, and it's just horrible. But he'll be back. He'll be back. He'll be right. So on Mick, what do you think the repercussions are going to be for Mick? Because I like Mick. I've spoken to Mick several times. I think he's a great bloke. Do you think that there might be some irreparable damage done to Mick because of this?
Yeah, I really like him as well. He's a good fella. He's done an outstanding job in promoting this fight, as he did with his second Jeff Horn fight. He's a fantastic fella. He's got the persona of the bad guy.
Yeah, he plays the heel really well.
Himself. Yeah, and it's great, and he sort of leaned into it, and good on him for doing that, because you really need that person in Australian boxing, and he's done it perfectly. So yeah, he's a good fella, no doubt, and I hope he's doing okay, because it's been very tough what he would have seen and heard and read about himself over the last few days since he decided to pull out of this fight. I've messaged with him, and he sounds like he's in a decent sort of a place, which is good. But yeah, you'd have to think that this does damage, and it's not damage that can be repaired very easily. He's walked away from a fight for a reason that just doesn't stack up to a lot of people. So yeah, it's going to be difficult for him to establish himself in domestic boxing to the position that he wanted to gain. He wanted to be an A-side. He wanted to be someone that people watched rather than someone that people tried to watch get beat. So he's not going to get to that position, I don't think, now, and that is a real shame. But that's not to say he can't get some major fights internationally. He's still world ranked. He could certainly get into a big fight overseas and hopefully cause another major upset. But yeah, it's difficult to come back from what's happened this week.
Yeah, well, he's still got our support, but yeah, I mean, I like Mick. He's a funny bugger, but hopefully that he can, because I don't take any notice of what people on social media say. They wouldn't. You know, I pay no mind to what those people say. So who cares what social media and all those people say? But at the end of the day,
well, hopefully he has the same attitude and he can put all that stuff behind him, because as you will have seen, it's been absolutely brutal. And it's not just social media; it's the mainstream reporting of it, and just the general opinion about walking away from a fight after having talked his way into it and said all the things that he has said. I've spoken extensively with the team, his team, and himself before and after this decision. Really tried to convince them that they weren't doing the right thing in pulling out of the fight beforehand, but it just seemed that they were very stuck on that idea of trying to avoid a 14-day quarantine, even though there was no 14-day quarantine in place and they could have travelled freely back home to Melbourne under the current situation. So, it's a very confusing one as to why they've done what they've done, but it is done now, and, hopefully Michael Zerafa's doing okay.
Yeah, we hope so. And what makes things even worse is that the Storm played the Roosters the following night, and the Knights have played the Cowboys. So there's been 2 NRL games in Newcastle, so that makes the situation look even worse, unfortunately.
Yeah, well, and there's other fighters from around the world, including a Filipino boxer who's flown in and already done 2 weeks quarantine to get to Newcastle. Cesar Amonsot's on the undercard. He's flying direct from Melbourne to Newcastle and he'll fly back the next day. There's a number of working media and people involved in the promotion who are flying from Melbourne for the fight. They'll head straight home the next day without any need for quarantine. So, yeah, it doesn't look good, that's for sure.
But let's talk about more positive things. The undercard, I love main event. No Limit Boxing. Geez, they put on a good show each and every time. You've really got a tip there.
We've worked really hard on this undercard, and really happy with the way that it's turned out. There's been a lot of dramas again in the lead up to this one with people being injured and pull-outs and all sorts of dramas around COVID as well. But the co-main event is just outstanding. Liam Wilson, a superstar on the rise. He's had 9 professional fights. This will be his 10th. It's the toughest by far. He goes in against that Filipino boxer that I mentioned, Joe Noine, who flew over to Australia, did the 2 weeks quarantine in a Sydney hotel room and is now in Newcastle and ready to defend his WBO regional belt and also his world rankings. He's ranked across 3 of the governing bodies. He's as high as number 7 with the WBO, so he's a serious fighter. And Liam Wilson will go in as the favourite in this fight, but Joe Noine is no joke. He's been international before. He's been to Japan for his last few fights. He's fought in China as well. He's got a very strong record. He's a clinical boxer, so Wilson will have to be at his very best to win. But, gee, there's high stakes because if he can win that fight, he goes into the top 10 in at least the WBO and he gets rankings in 2 of the other governing bodies and he's on the cusp of something major at super featherweight. So that is a massive co-main event, a really, really exciting fight. Also on the card, Wade Ryan has a rematch against Troy O'Meara. The first time that they fought was a very, very good fight in Cessnock, and now they move up the road to Newcastle to do it again. That'll be a really good fight. Cesar Amonsot, I mentioned, against Sam RC. That's a good fight for both of them. Amonsot, we know all about him, best known for that war he had with Michael Katsidis, and Sam RC's been out of the ring for a long, long time. I think it's 5 years.
Yeah, 5 years, 5 years, yeah.
But he gets back in a tough fight, and we get to see just how good he is because he's such a talented boxer, and it's good to see him back. And Lynn Sandstrom fights again in the first of the bouts in a female fight for an Australasian belt as well. So a good fight card on Main Event live at 7 p.m. on Wednesday local time, and can't wait to call all the action.
Yeah, so a busy week. So as usual, we've got the final press conference tomorrow and then the weigh-in on Tuesday. They will be, I'm stabbing the dark here, 12 o'clock or is it 11?
11 o'clock tomorrow for the press conference. It'll be live at the venue. You'll see that live across Fox Sports News, Fox League as well, probably Fox Footy, I think, as well, if you're watching on TV. Otherwise, live on the Main Event Facebook page and various other pages. So I'll be hosting that. And then midday on Tuesday is the weigh-ins, where we'll weigh in all of the fighters live at the venue as well, of course, culminating in seeing Stevie Spark at Super Welterweight for the first time, and Tim Tszyu hopefully making weight to defend his regional belt as well. A really, really big fight for both of those fighters, and we just can't wait to see all of the action and then to see what is next for the pair of them. If Stevie Spark would have caused the upset, well, he's on his way, isn't he, for major things here in Australia and internationally, and he becomes a star in a moment, whereas Tim Tszyu's already a star and he's got some really, really big fights coming up. Hopefully a world title shot next, but we have to wait and see how things play out with the WBO and the other governing bodies after the Charlo Castano fight. But either way, it's a really significant event this Wednesday night, a big fight, and there's a lot at stake.
Absolutely. And ESPN, we've reported that ESPN's picked up the fight, so they're getting some international exposure, which is great for Tim and all the other fighters to be picked up on hopefully it's still on ESPN.
I believe it is. So they take our coverage. They've done that on a number of these fights that we've done with Tim Tszyu. So I believe we'll be going ESPN, certainly into Russia as well, as we have done the last few with Tim Tszyu. And a number of other countries have started picking up these events. So, it's good to get that global exposure for not only Tszyu but for the fighters on the undercard, and they get a chance to have a look at Liam Wilson again, which is great because he'll be in some major international fights sometime soon, assuming that he can get past Joe Noine in a tough co-main event.
Absolutely. I found an interesting question on social media the other day, and I wanted to ask you, is there any record or can we find pay-per-view buys for each event? Do you guys publicise that? Or
No, they're not publicised.
I didn't think so. They're
not publicised for a number of reasons, mainly because unlike in the US where you just get a figure and that's sort of how it works, you know, how many individual downloads or subscriptions there have been for a pay-per-view event. Here in Australia, a lot of it goes through to venues, clubs and pubs who buy per capacity of their venue. So if you were to put out a figure, it doesn't really do justice as to what has actually happened, because there's a sliding scale for venues as well, which are a big portion of the pay-per-view here in Australia. And there's just always been a policy of not releasing those figures. So, no, you won't be able to find those anywhere, but you obviously know the big ones that have happened domestically. Mundine Green one was a massive event internationally. Floyd Mayweather against Conor McGregor was a huge event, and so was the Manny Pacquiao-Floyd Mayweather fight. And in recent times, we've seen some really good figures around fights like Jeff Horn against Tim Tszyu. The Horn-Pacquiao fight was a massive event that didn't do as well in households as it did in terms of ticket sales, because there were so many people there at Suncorp Stadium, and also every pub in Australia had it on. So, it's a tricky one to work out, but there's reasons that they don't announce those figures.
Yeah, that's fair. Is Danny Green versus Roy Jones still up there? I heard that was...
Yeah, it's right up there. It's it'd be in the top 10.
Yep.
It won't be the co-main just because they have the same trainer, but he'll be on that card fighting against Joshua Greer. So
they're actually doing that fight. Sweet, I didn't hear that.
Yeah. Well, that was a fight that was. It should be announced this week, but it was a fight that was meant to take place a while back.
Anzac Day last year.
Yeah, and then Greer had another fight and was upset, and now they're gonna do it again. So Jason will be heading back over as well. And they'll be flying together, finishing their preparations, fighting on the same card. And hopefully, when they come back, Jason's a winner and Andrew has a version of the world title.
Absolutely. And hopefully, if George and Lopez ever do get into the ring, George gives Lopez a good one and brings all those belts back home. So that would be... is the commitment from Main Event still there to pick that up, or is that all up in the air now?
Well, it'll have to be sorted out again, but the previous couple of times that it was going to be on, it was going to be picked up. So, assuming that it happens again and it's on a date that's available, that would be the plan. We'd be pushing to.
On that, I'm going Charlo.
Yeah, I think Charlo goes in a heavy favourite. He deserves to. He's fighting everyone he can at the moment. Unlike his brother, he just seems keen to take every possible fight and to prove himself as the best in the division. I think it'll be too slick for Castano, but he's an impressive fighter, Castano. He's a real pressure fighter. And,
yes.
When you look at it, maybe stylistically, Charlo's a better fight for Tim Tszyu than what Castano would be. That pressure style might be something that he'd have to figure out, whereas Charlo's going to try and box with him. And I fancy that Tim Tszyu's going to be too slick if they fought each other. So fascinating fight. You'll see it on Fox Sports as well, and we'll get to see exactly what is in store for the winner of this Tszyu Spark fight when we have a look at that in a couple of weeks.
Yeah, I think Tim Tszyu's fight will be against the I can't pronounce his name, the Russian fighter Kambosos, I believe. He's ranked number 2 of the WBO at the moment. He just had eliminated with Liam Smith, got up. I think
it's a chance that could be made. That's one that's been discussed, but it's not the preferred option just at the moment. They'd rather go straight into a world title fight with the winner of that fight. There was a plan to stick with the PBC side of things, given that Charlo and Castano are on that side of the street, and to bring out Jarrett Hurd for a fight.
Oh, that'd be a good fight.
If the world title shot couldn't be confirmed, but and those discussions were well advanced, but unfortunately Jarrett Hurd was upset on the Floyd Mayweather exhibition fight against Logan Paul recently, so all of those conversations, and they had been well advanced, went out the window. So there's a lot of things happening, but we'll just wait over the next couple of weeks, see what happens in the Tszyu fight, see what happens in the Charlo-Castano fight, and then make a plan from there.
So which fight are you looking forward to the best on Wednesday night? Liam Wilson?
Yeah, Liam Wilson against Joe Noine. That's a fantastic fight. I think people are underestimating just how serious a fighter Noine is. He's ranked 7, 12 and 15 across 3 of the governing bodies. He's someone who travels and is happy to do so and causes upsets at will. And Liam Wilson is just such a fantastic talent who has been in fights that probably haven't stylistically suited him in recent times. So we get to see him in a fight that he really wants to be in this time, against a slick boxer, against someone who's going to be there trying to box with him, and we get to see him at his stylistical best, I think, in this fight against Noine. So it'd be a massive win. I know he is a heavy favourite, but there'll be plenty around the world who'd be thinking that Noine is going to be too much for him. So yeah, can't wait to see what happens in that co-main and see exactly what we've got in store for us in the journey of Liam Wilson.
Well, all the action happens Wednesday night at 7 p.m. kickoff Australian Eastern Standard Time. The main event is Tszyu versus Stevie Spark. Ben, we look forward to seeing you tomorrow morning at 11 o'clock, mate, for the final press conference. And it's always a pleasure having you on the channel, mate. And hopefully we'll talk to you again soon when more action happens for Australian boxing.
All right, mate. No worries. Enjoy fight week and enjoy Tszyu against Stevie Spark.